You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have another special guest. Today we have joining us Miss Julie Coraccio. She is a award-winning professional life and end-of-life organizer, certified life coach, and professional declutter. She also has an amazing popular podcast. It's called Clear Your Clutter Inside and Out. And she's also an author of 15 books. I mean, if you think you're busy, you might want to check with her first. So further, I just want to say, how you doing, ma'am? And welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. And thanks for having me.
And you are very busy. I mean, I just can't wait to learn about how you got started. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
I am currently in Wheeling, West Virginia. I moved back to my hometown last year. My mom got sick, and so we came back to help care for her. But I lived all over. I lived in Massachusetts, Vermont, out in Los Angeles, and then I was in North Carolina for about 15 years before moving back here.
And when you started, as far as your education, what inspired you to want to become a life coach?
Well, I had worked in Los Angeles and I moved out to North Carolina, and then I got a job in Tennessee and would commute once a month. And then I really lucked out because they fell apart and I left right before that was happening. So then I got a job. I've always worked in fundraising, raising money for nonprofits. And I started one. I was like, oh man, this was not the right place for me. So I thought, what could I do where I could help people, but I have to pay the bills, right? You know, I'm just not going to get fed on my looks alone. So I was like, what can I do that would support people and make money? And so then I came up with organizing. But what I realized working in the organizing process, one, that it was more about clearing the clutter, but people say, hey, can we talk? And so I wanted to become a coach so that when we were doing the sessions, it just wasn't about, okay, let's organize and let's declutter, but what's really going on here? How can we go deeper and see what's behind all the stuff so that we can move forward and teach people skills to support themselves?
And you also do speaking engagements as well. When you are helping a client, what are some of the requirements that you look for in the client before you actually get started?
Well, I definitely do a free consultation because we need to make sure that we match. You know, this work is really intimate. And so they need to be able to trust me, feel comfortable with me, to be totally honest, because if we're not honest with ourselves, then we're not going to be able to move forward. So I think it's really important to have a good fit for my skills. Like, for instance, if someone had issues around hoarding, I wouldn't work with them because you need special training around that. So I really work well with people who are like, you know what, I'm stuck. I know some things need to change, but I'm not sure what. And then we can work together to move forward, because everyone listening right now has the answers within. They know what is best for them. I don't. My job is to support them and bringing that to the surface so that they can take action and move forward.
Once again, you're listening to I Am Refocused Radio, and we're talking to Miss Julie Coraccio. And you can go to her website, reawakenyourbrilliance.com. She has online courses on there, as well as information how to get in contact with her. With your online courses, is there any difference between your online courses and one-on-one sessions?
It's just really, you're going to get more hand holding, obviously, in the one-on-one sessions. But what I did with the classes is they're really broken down. So some are maybe 5 minutes long, some are maybe 10, some maybe a little more. But if you're like, you know what, I only have 10 minutes a day, then there's something you can do to take action. And then again, they're more general. If you've got something that you're working on, when we work one-on-one, we can address that as opposed to doing an online course. But, I wanted to have something for everyone's budget. There's been times in my life I haven't had a lot of money, but I still wanted to do personal growth work.
And with your podcast that you have, Clear Your Clutter Inside and Out, what's some of the hot topics that you talk about on the show, and as far as the target for your audience?
Well, so I would say it's mainly women. I know one of my biggest fans is actually a man, and I'd say it's roughly ages 30 to 60. And so again, as people are like overwhelmed, I'm stuck in life. What is it that I need to do? And so people seem to really respond. I do talk about physical clutter, but more like the emotional, mental, and spiritual clutter. That seemed like, I've talked about forgiveness, having gratitude, about emotional clutters, like if we don't feel our feelings. It's really a wide variety because the inner reflects the outer. So, for example, a messy desk is usually about lacking mental clarity. So if we work on clearing our clutter on our desk, then it usually helps our mental clarity and vice versa. When we know our priorities and what's important in life, we can let the clutter go. And the clutter is everything else that's what we're not focusing on at the moment.
And speaking of clutter, being organized is very helpful and useful in both professional and personal life. I'm going to pose you a question. You can answer it how you want. Is being organized, is this something that people just have, or is it something that people had to learn how to develop along the way?
I think that some people have it. Like me, I'm kind of an uptight personality, but I'm a little different in that I'm both very right brained and left brained. Like I trust my intuition. That's something I'll follow. And the older more I do that. But I also believe it's a learned skill. Like if it's something that you're not born with, you can learn how to get organized. Absolutely.
And do you have an example of a client or a couple of clients that you had to maybe tell them not yet, or maybe the opposite? They were kind of having the skills of being organized, but they just need to be sharpened. Do you have examples of those kind of clients?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the questions I ask when on my assessment is in what way are you organized? Because I want people to recognize right off the bat, there's usually some way that they're organized and they might not acknowledge that. And so that's important to say, hey, you're doing this already and let's build upon that. And for me, it's about awareness. We have to become more aware, like, where do I need to get organized, or how is it affecting my life? As one example, I don't want people to look at piles of paper on their desk as clutter. It's obviously that, but I want them to see that's a roadblock to getting a promotion because they've done studies. If you aren't organized at work, people tend to trust you less. And then if they don't trust you, then they're probably going to hesitate if they, to give you promotion. Or like looking at your closet. And if it's stuff full of clothes, not only is it stuff full of clothes, but that might be an impediment to a relationship that's trying to flourish. Does that make sense?
That definitely makes sense. And for someone who may have that issue, I know you said there's some specialty. What were you saying earlier? You said there's some specialty.
Hoarder. So, like for instance, if someone's a hoarder, that's like a whole different ball game. That's like you can hardly walk into the apartment or the house because it's so packed, and there's a psychological aspect behind that. And so to work with hoarders, you need special training. But I would also say with the people that I work, there's something behind the clutter as well, just not at the extreme level of a hoarder.
So, for example, if someone's listening right now and maybe they themselves or they know someone who may not be on that extreme end, but maybe they're just they're not consistent. So they have a lot of times where things just get a little out of whack and they have a hard time to, I guess, readjust themselves to be sharp again. Is that normal, or is that something that has to be addressed?
Oh, you know what? I think it's normal. I think it's probably more normal than people realize. Now, one thing I would say is life happens. Like my mom got sick and I had to help take care of her. So that was the priority. So other things kind of had to fall the wayside. But the thing is, I'd always come back and make sure that things get done. People become paralyzed. Think about it. If you've been in a home 10, 20, 30, 40 years and you never take anything out, you never do any decluttering, that's going to end up being a lot of stuff. And sometimes people are surprised, put it all in the attic, put it all in the basement, put it all in the garage, kind of out of sight, out of mind. But when then they sit down to go deal with it, like, wow, I have a lot of stuff. But don't ever lose hope. You can always work through it. You can always declutter. Don't think that you've reached a point where it's too much. You can definitely release it.
And with some of the books that you have written, was some books that you can talk on this show about that kind of helps address organizational skills? And it sounds like a lot of just making your mind up and making a choice.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. Awareness plus action equals change. And you have to make the decision. I'm going to choose. The present moment is your point of power to change. You can't change the past. I've tried really hard to go back and change the past and hasn't happened yet. And we're in the future, as my father would say, we're borrowing trouble, right? Because the future is written in pencil. We don't know what's going to happen. And so we spend our time worrying. So make that choice and make that change in the present moment. And so a series of the books are journal prompts, because as I've mentioned earlier, I believe we all have the wisdom within. And so I have a series like, mental clutter, spiritual clutter, relationship clutter. And that's about, okay, answering these questions. And then I teach you how to come up with a plan of action. And then the other books are a little more hand holding, go into a little more depth, talking about mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical clutter in one book. And then I just released this year a 21-day challenge. So if you're super overwhelmed by clutter, again, this is really basic place to start. We're going to look at clutter in 7 areas, and you're going to increase your awareness, and then you're going to take action, and then teaches you how to have a game plan at the end and move forward.
Once again, we're talking to amazing guest today, Miss Julie Coraccio. And as we have been going through, we know, these times, unique times, if you will, a lot of people been realizing that a lot of things in certain ways have slowed down, where they've been able to reflect more and kind of see what's going on in their lives. When we have these opportunities to do that and reflect and say, okay, this is where I can sharpen here and sharpen there. And not just the first decision of making a choice and taking action, what's some of the ways that you have learned from your clients that help them stay consistent and not just, naturally we can, fall, but like you said, we can have to make that choice to come right back together. What's some of the things you have seen and witnessed with your clients where it helped them remain consistent as much as possible?
Writing it down. Now that might seem really simple, but I can't tell you how many people run to, oh, it's in my head. Well, you know what? Our brains are meant to create, to think. They're not meant to remember stuff. So if you write it down, that's the first thing. Say, okay, you know what? I'm going to commit to 10 minutes today, or I'm going to commit to an hour on a Saturday, 2 hours on a Sunday, whatever it is. The first thing is to write it down. The second thing is start in one area and don't move on to the next until it's complete. So what I mean by that is, if you start in the office, do not go on to the kitchen until you have done your decluttering and organizing in the office. Because sometimes what will happen is we'll start in one area, then we'll go to another, and then nothing gets done. I would say the third thing after writing it down, staying in one area, is try to understand your why. If you're able to figure that out, that's going to support you. So I'm sitting here in my office as I talk to you. So maybe I have a stack of papers, or my office is really decluttered. Are you afraid to succeed? Are you afraid to fail? Because you know what? All that clutter keeps you distracted. That doesn't keep you focused on your business or writing the great American novel or doing your artwork or whatever it is. So try, if you can, to dig a little deeper and be in a place of neutrality. Don't judge yourself. We all have our challenges that we're working on. And when we go into judgment, that's a whole other rabbit hole, and we can get distracted. So bring yourself to the present and see if you can find out the why behind your clutter.
And speaking of what we see as far as decluttering our rooms and office space and whatnot, what about the mind? As far as, is it possible for people to have thoughts that can, I guess, pile up on them to where they are not allowing themselves to clear their, unnecessary thoughts that prevents them from being productive? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Mental clutter, 1,000%. That can look like worry. That can look like monkey mind, right? Where our mind never shuts off. We're worrying about stuff 24/7, or we go down that woulda, shoulda, coulda path, or we try to pick something apart and examine it, 50,000 different ways. And so absolutely we can get mental clutter, and it's important as well to address that. So again, becoming aware. Well, what's my mental clutter? Oh, I tend to pick things apart after we take some time observing. Well, why do I pick things apart? Oh, maybe it's a distraction. Maybe it serves as a distraction because I don't want to think about something bigger that's going on in my life that I don't want to address right now. It's going to be individual for everyone, but it's what I talked about a moment ago is What's the why? Can we dig a little deeper and figure out what's why behind our mental clutter?
And for those individuals who are in their professional career or their small business owner, when they are approaching their day-to-day tasks at work, not just at home, but how important is to have these kind of same principles as they are doing their day-to-day work as they are trying to progress in their field?
I think it's absolutely important because whatever's going on in your personal life is going to be reflected in your professional life and vice versa. So if you're kind of messy at home, it's probably going to translate to the office. If you're disorganized at office, you're probably going to be disorganized at home. The average person spends 38 hours a year looking for things. That's almost an entire week looking for things that they've lost. I mentioned earlier that if people have a messy desk at work or disorganized, they're less trusted. There are all sorts of statistics on that. And so if you want to be more productive and you want to just knock it out of the park in your business or your work life, it's important to be organized and clear your clutter.
Once again, you listen to I Am Refocused Radio, and we're talking to Julie Coraccio. And you can visit our website, reawakenyourbrilliance.com. And let's take a moment talk about your website. What's some of the resources that people can find on your website, whether they're ready to book you right away or if it's a screening process?
Well, I've got a lot of blogs, and that's free. They're fairly in depth, and I blog weekly. There's also the option of the podcast, which you can find there. It should be anywhere that you listen to podcasts. That's Clear Your Clutter Inside It Out. Again, that's a free resource. It's also on YouTube, and they can find my social media information there if they'd like to connect and follow. And then, of course, if they want to work with me one-on-one, I also have affirmations classes and, of course, the books.
And affirmation, speaking of that, that's a big topic. And I would like to ask you, take a moment, since you're a professional in this world, what is the right way to do affirmations and what is the incorrect way? And what is the definition of actually a true affirmation?
I don't know if I know, if you were to grab out Wikipedia or Google, and I don't know if I know the true definition of an affirmation. To me, an affirmation is a positive reinforcement about what you're trying to create, what you desire in your life. Now, you don't want to do, I'm not happy. You don't want to do the negative, because remember when the universe or God or whatever you believe is hearing that, they're going to focus on that not. So you want to be in the present moment and you want to be positive. Like, here are a couple minds. I have all the time in the world. So then I don't get stressed about, oh my gosh, I've got too much to do. So, time for health creates energy for everything. Health is one of my big things this year. I am powerful. I am supporting people. I am making a difference in the world. Whatever it is that is going to help, that's important to you, and that's going to help you remain positive. Now, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking over, I've got a list of affirmations tacked on my bulletin board. That's something you want to look at every day and say them. Good thing also is you're like, oh, I can't remember doing them, then do them while you're in the shower, or have some affirmations in your car. So if you're stuck in traffic, that you're able to say those. So you want to say, be positive and keep them in the present moment. Don't do past or future, and don't include a negative. So like, I'm not.
And that makes sense. This kind of makes me think about like grade school and middle school. They introduce students into planners, and every day of the week you wrote your week out and what you plan to do for the rest of the week. Is that similar to having vision boards and also Post-it notes and what you kind of referred to a moment ago?
Yeah, but no Post-it notes, because if we have Post-it notes, they tend to fall off and get lost. So everything else I think is good, but I would try to avoid the Post-it notes. And, you mentioned another good thing. I'm a huge fan of planning. And when I wake up in the morning, I visualize my day. How's my day going to go? And one thing that I've also done is, if something goes awry, something not so great happens, I visualize myself handling that with ease and grace. Okay, we got this. You got it. And so you want to put your frame of mind. Okay, it's going to be an amazing day today. It's going to be great today. Let's visualize how my day going smoothly. And if we have a bump along the road, I'm able to take care of it.
And you, as a professional business owner, I'm sure you practice this a lot with your own business to marketing and scaling and how, as far as speaking to the specifically the entrepreneurs out there, once they're in their, I guess you quote unquote game, they're in the business world and they are started and a few years go by, what what would you tell entrepreneurs out there just generally if they ever feel like they are flatline where they're not actually they're excited but they're not excited, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I definitely get what you're saying. And that's a great question because then you need to pivot. And so an example was I wrote the books. I started the podcast. Like, you know what? I kind of want to expand a little what I'm doing. I'm really into personal growth work. I want to bring that in my business. And so I would say be prepared that your business will change and grow as you change and grow. And, and then for some people, it just might not be what you're interested in doing anymore. And that's okay. And then you find out what you're passionate about and stick to that. But I think a lot of times especially for solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, because I feel like we can more easily pivot, say, than a huge corporation, is that there are things we can expand what we're doing kind of in the realm with what we're already doing. Does that make sense?
Definitely, definitely. And also adding to that, when on the flip side, you're a employee working your 9 to 5, you're in the corporate world, those who are wanting to go up the ladder, so to speak, was some general good traits of a good employee who can help themselves position themselves in that position to have the opportunities in the future to attract those new chapters in their life?
I'd say be a leader. Be a leader, and you be a leader by you listen well. You're not too big for any job. If they need you to lick envelopes, you lick envelopes. I'll tell you one of the things. I was in fund development for a long time and a leader would lick envelopes with you. So you're not too big for any job. You listen well, you volunteer for stuff, you take action. And you know what? You have good boundaries. And part of that is being able to say no and not letting anyone steamroll you at work and standing up for yourself. And then, always paying attention. And if you can go that extra mile, do that. And I think that it's a balance because I think there's sometimes some people believe, oh, I have to sacrifice everything to go up the ladder. I don't think that's true at all. And I think things are changing and they're more holistic than they were, 20 or 30 years when I was starting out. And so I think that those are qualities that are more important now. And you know what? If they aren't at the place you are, then maybe that's not the right culture for you. And you need to find a place that does embrace that.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio. We had true honor talking to Julie Coraccio. And I like what you said because it made me think of something I heard someone say to me before. And they said the old legend is, if everywhere you go is always negative, then maybe it's you.
Absolutely. What other people do and say is about them, and how you respond is about you.
And when you are working with clients who progress and who are seeing a change in their personal and professional life, was some of the story, maybe one story while we have time left with you, that someone has expressed, man, like, yeah, I'm everything's clicking. The light bulb is on and it's just going.
Oh gosh, I have to just have one. I think, okay. Oh gosh, this is really hard. So I once had a client who was homeschooling. She was very creative and just everything in the house was disorganized and full of clutter. So getting those together so that she could focus on her side hustle was great, but was even better in my view was the relationships with her family. The big thing that changed was the relationship with her mother-in-law, because every time her mother-in-law would walk into the house, she'd criticize her, and that drove her absolutely crazy. So not only did that get better, but she was also the part of clearing the clutter and getting organized, able to say, I'm exhausted. I do a lot. How about you come over and watch the kids? So she was able to get time for herself, and it improved her relationship with her husband and her children. And, when you improve all that and your relationships are working well, they have such an impact on our day-to-day life. And so it translated into her being able to do her side hustle and make that into a mini business.
Once again, if you are listening to this right now, I Am Refocused Radio, you can go visit Julie's website. Her website is reawakenyourbrilliance.com. And also check out her awesome podcast that she has, Clear Your Clutter, Inside and Out. And she also has 15 different books that I'm sure you can find information on that on her website, or just Google her. I'm pretty sure you can find all of that. But before we let you go, what can people listen right now? What can they do to contact you? And what's the first step for them for screening?
Thank you. So if they just go to reawakenyourbrilliance.com, they can sign up or email me at julie@reawakenyourbrilliance.com. I offer a 15-minute free consultation, and that would be the first step to get started.
Well, once again, it's a true honor having you on the show. And I definitely took some mental notes today. And I think most people who are successful do that on a regular basis. So I would want to say thank you for taking time, your busy schedule, talking to I Am Refocused Radio today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and you keep sharing your gifts with the world.
I Am Refocused Radio is brought to you by Foo 4 Star and Holy Crab. Foo 4 Star is a family-owned Asian restaurant in San Antonio, Texas. We have been a local favorite for Asian cuisine for over 10 years. With nothing but full smiles and fast service, you'll be leaving satisfied. Come on in for some authentic Vietnamese food. Holy Crab is one-of-a-kind Cajun Creole-style seafood restaurant located in Universal City, Texas. We offer traditional seafood items as well as chicken and steak. We also offer seafood boils. Come give us a try. You won't be disappointed. You can find these two eateries in Universal City, Texas at 2921 Pat Booker Road.